Hello there. It's me, Moon. Um, Glad to see some people are here. I just wanted to chat a little bit and continue on, maybe wrap up the Ritae section that we were going through in the Black Hand playing the Sabbat. Um, yeah, I've been writing recently and doing a lot of reading, which is great. Always good to get some reading in. I kind of have been lax about reading in general. But yeah, it's been good. It's been good. I've been reading. There is no antimemetics division. It's a book, I guess, based on a SCP that was put out not too far, not too long ago, or maybe a million years ago. I don't know. It was recommended to me, and I've been really enjoying it. About halfway through that, been rereading Heart Shaped Box um, by boy, what's his name? Stephen King's son. What's his name? Something Hill. I forget. That's just how it is nowadays. And Brandon Sanderson's Way of Kings, and Wasp Factory. Yes, I know. I read like five books at the same time. It's just a bad habit of mine. I just pick one up and then pick up another. I finished The Lamb Will Slaughter the Lion, which is fantastic. Highly recommend it. Really, really good. And I unfortunately picked up Sapling Cage, which is by the same author, and we'll probably add that to the list, making it five or six books. Um, and that's on top of some, RPG stuff that I read. I try to read RPG books pretty regularly. I've been trying to read more of the kind of Mork Borg esque series of books. Um, and of course, I read stuff like by local producers and local RPG people. Um, I picked up Sickest Witch and Oldest Child by Justin Sirios. That was very good. Severed Books. Definitely a great read. I've actually played Oldest Child a while back, and that was pretty fun. It was interesting, and I played it with kind of a non-gamer, which was a great experience. Actually, definitely an interesting game to play like in your house at night with like one other person. I'd say it's fun. Um, and yeah, that's about it. I oh, and Rapscallion. I've been reading that again. I think it's fantastic as a game. Just the art is incredible, and the game itself is very good. Mechanics as well are fantastic in that game. Definitely, I'm a sucker for pirate games. I love pirate games. I don't say I love Powered by the Apocalypse, but I think Powered by the Apocalypse is definitely kind of the freshest system out there right now, in my opinion, in its lightest form. And when Power of the Apocalypse is done very light, I think it's basically the freshest mechanical system. I'm not a big fan of like OSR and that kind of stuff. I really grew up with that style of game, the OSR style of game. I played a lot of that. I really played a lot of that kind of like um, kind of brutal 2E, 1E D&D. Um, and I guess I'm good. I don't need any more of it. Like Shadow Dark and all that. That like sounds interesting, but it doesn't really grab me. But I can see why people are interested. When I was younger, I thought that was super cool. But I didn't have a lot of options back then either. So it is what it is. I really did like Mythic Bastion Land. I thought that was incredible. Incredible book. If you can get your hands on it, you could. I just picked up Electric Bastion Land, actually, and I'm reading that. It's not grabbing me as much as Mythic did. I just think Mythic was just much tighter in presentation and design, even though they're very, obviously kind of similar books, though one is like sci-fi dystopian and the other is very much kind of Arthurian fantasy. Mythic Bastion Land is just so tight in design. I'm really kind of impressed and blown away by it. Just like they will not be deterred from basically everything being a tight one-page spread all throughout the book, which is incredible. Well, sorry, tight two-page spread. Basically, you crack open the book and boom, it's a full thing. Like it's a scenario and an antagonist, an encounter, and everything. A great drawing that is specific to that encounter and to that antagonist. Basically on as just two-page spreads all throughout the book. It's just like they will not be deterred. They will not be persuaded to sully their design. So it was really incredible. It won an Emmy for very good reason, I'm not surprised. So I was very happy to luck into picking up a copy of that last Gen Con, and I just reread it every now and then. But yeah, Electric Bastion Land's pretty awesome. I would recommend it, though I think Mythic is probably, I don't know, I'd say better, but definitely tighter in design. And of course, it's fantasy oriented, which I find in general more people play fantasy games than sci-fi dystopian kind of paranoia-esque games, which Electric Bastion Land I think fits that mold a little better. And I've been looking at like hex crawl kind of mechanical stuff, and that's been very interesting. I never really got into that, though I did love like mech games and stuff like that. I like the concept of exploring maps and building bases and all that. And that's kind of engineered a thought for a game as well, but we'll see where that goes. So, the Black Hand playing the Sabbat, we were talking about Ritae. I have kind of a tight schedule today. I can't go over, but I think I've got a good hour to chat, maybe a little longer, and as always, happy to answer questions and all the rest. Though also happy to like get through the book too. So don't be dissuaded to ask any questions, but it is what it is. So last time we chatted, we talked about Numinous. We talked about Octoritas Ritae and also a little bit of Ignobilis Ritae, what they are, how they work, and the like mechanical systems that we put together in the book to make sense of it. So Numinous Ritae, these are a new form or type of Ritae that we established for this book. We didn't want to just rehash old things. We didn't want to kind of make a legacy-only product. We very much wanted to make a product that fit into V5, a book that fit into V5. Didn't rewrite things or rehash things or try to reinsert old things into V5 that had been removed for a purpose. But we didn't want to just redo all the old stale stuff or kind of reiterate stuff people already knew. We always wanted a new spin, freshen things up, and to keep things lively and useful. So the Numinous Ritae, they are mostly a story element. They do have mechanics, and in my opinion, they have interesting mechanics. But their mechanics are not. It's not. They work mechanically, obviously, and pretty tightly too. But it is implied by their very nature that these mechanics can be shifted and changed, and we basically make it a story point that players working with Numinous Ritae could discover different new ways to use them and to affect and change their systems. In a sense, that would be like a project or a plot, if you're familiar with the project system in the V5 core book, or the plot system that's introduced in my supplement, The New Flesh, or Crowned in Shadow. The plot system is basically just the project system kind of stripped down and made, I don't want to say mechanically tighter. I think the project system mechanically works fine. It just is a little roll heavy and kind of really puts a lot of weight mechanically on the storyteller, unfortunately, for like record keeping and resource management. That that's not really why I play Vampire the Masquerade. I don't want a resource management game. Um, so plots kind of strips that all down and simplifies it. But it's basically the same as the project system. And if you like the project system, you can actually still use the plot system alongside the project system. The plots, because the plots in general can be a lot shorter than most projects are and can accomplish much kind of smaller goals than projects can. Only the longest form, most complicated plots can basically achieve um, the same thing a project can. So the way I like to think of it is that, like, one or two plots could basically create the same effect. Yeah, like I'd say 1 to 3 plots should be able to create the same effect as most projects, and that only the most complicated projects are beyond the scope of 1 or 2 plots. And then in the Ivory Tower play in the Camarilla, we're talking about something called a conspiracy, which is basically several projects that are working towards a similar goal, but that the individual people in the projects are unaware of basically the overall goal, and that's why it's called a conspiracy. And that basically there would be somebody who's kind of well, not necessarily just somebody, but a group organization that's in charge of the conspiracy and kind of guiding and undermining these projects to reach the goal of the conspiracy. So each individual, like, one project could be basically taking over like a police station, and they think it's for their own purposes, and it may be, but maybe they have a mentor who's like chipped in some resources, and they've and they're putting their own people, their own like ghouls or pawns in the police station as well. So while they're focused on, like, we just want this police station, the mastermind is more focused on the bureaucracy within that police station, and like maybe the flow of evidence or something like that. And then another project could be about, like, building a secret tunnel between 2 locations, and while possibly the vampires in charge of that project are only really interested, excuse me, in using that secret tunnel as a way to kind of like escape their haven or get around their territory. Perhaps their mentor or Malwa or allies they're depending upon are connected to the mastermind, and they're basically building kind of like side tunnels for their larger project of maybe undermining the court, right? Like maybe the goal of the whole thing is to basically sneak in some mortal hunters to assassinate some like pivotal members of the court, and make sure that the cops are so undermined by the corruption, and the media is so undermined, or the media is so undermined by corruption, that they'll be able to do so with the least amount of masquerade breach. That would be the conspiracy, the goal of the conspiracy. All these projects would feed into the conspiracy, and the individual people in the projects would not know that basically their projects are being used to this larger goal, and might not even be aware of the spider webs inside their own projects that are allowing for them to be undermined. Whether it's because a mentor has chipped in resources to their project, whether some of the allies they're depending upon in the project are actually undermined or more loyal or also loyal to members of the conspiracy, or if even the resources themselves that they're drawing upon to achieve the goals of their project are part of some kind of fund or stash of gold that's protected by a member of the conspiracy, one of the masterminds. So it's kind of an interesting concept. We've got some preliminary work on that. I'm curious how it's going to work out and be presented in the book, whether it's going to be a whole thing or not. But that's neither here nor there. I kind of got sidetracked. Talking about Numinous Ritae, so I'll read the system for Numinous Ritae as opposed to the flavor text. Um, I will read this little quote from the Oaxaca Diaries, which is another supplement I hope we produce sometime in the near future. I'm talking to some of my co-writers about that. And that is mortal once, but now they have moved beyond even immortality. They have acquired the properties of the aeons through which they have passed. Time has clad them in impenetrable armor, but they were mortal once. And that's basically a aside about the antediluvians, basically. That whatever you can say about the antediluvians, that they were once mortal, maybe a long, long time ago, but mortal, and that as they have passed through time, as they have passed through the aeons, and this is kind of a esoteric, almost Jungian concept of passing through the spheres of like kind of planets or psychological idealions, that basically you are imprinted when you pass through these different spheres. And so in the same way, the antediluvians, as they like move through time, in a sense, it has imprint the time, the places, and the time that they move through, because obviously they would be asleep here and there, imprinted on them, and in some ways that is like the armor in which they are clad, just like the armor of time in a sense. And so if they can be stripped of that somehow, if we can learn about their mortal days, if we can stand where they stood, if we can put our hands where they once put their mortal hands, put our feet where they once placed their mortal feet, then perhaps we can understand, them on a either mystical, spiritual, or even psychological sense, and therefore, find the chink in their armor. And that's here because that is kind of the ethos of the Numinous Ritae, is that they're trying to figure out how to defeat the antediluvians in a mystical way, how to win this war in a mystical way, and the Numinous Ritae are seen as kind of the tip of the spear of how to do that. Maybe they're not. And where even the Numinous Ritae came from is a point of dispute. Another beauty of V5 in general is the smashed kind of hierarchies, the smashed continuity of knowledge in the Vampire the Masquerade universe. Like there are even more so than other editions of Vampire. I would say V5, one of V5's strong points is the meta plot is all kind of scrambled, mixed, and foggy. Like what's the problem with Salubri isn't really understood anymore, except for by old fogies. And even they, on some level, know that it was all kind of bullshit, so they're not even really sure if the lies they were fed back, like what lies to, repeat anymore. How to pronounce Zemise or, Bruja, like, who knows? Yet again, old fogies, and why would you listen to them, right? Like a lot of them are gone, and the few that remain are probably the worst of the worst. So, how the Numinous Ritae came about, it's unknown, and system-wise, it's these are pretty powerful Ritae in general. So when a pack invokes a Numinous Ritae, it always takes at least one night and deals one aggravated willpower damage to every K-Knight in the pack. That's kind of symbolized their unformed, chaotic nature of these rituals, that they're not like time-tested, they're not, universally recognized, that that there are definitely gaps, and that you really have to, kind of will your way through these rites for them to succeed. Let's see here. Multiple packs of Sabbat can participate in Numinous Ritae, but this only affects the outcome if the specific Ritae mentions them. In fact, word that a pack may be attempting a Numinous Ritae is just as likely to inspire trepidation as support among their brethren. That's basically to say that Numinous Ritae, their reputation of being unstable, of being dangerous, is pretty well known. That not everybody's going to be happy with the fact that you're down the street doing Numinous Ritae, right? Even though they might understand the overall goal, it in the long term, in the short term, it might not always be the best time to be trying the Numinous Ritae, right? Like maybe one pack is in a gang war with some anarchs, and they really don't want you murdering a bunch of mortals that they've been like feeding on to kind of repair themselves after these gang wars. They really don't want you basically like obliterating all the herd in the area for all the blood you need for some Numinous Ritae or something. That could cause some friction. Their short-term needs would be impacted by your kind of long-term experimentation and research. So most Numinous Ritae require expensive materials, rare offerings, and special implements before they can be attempted. This may require the pack to go out of the way to prepare for this invocation. Unless their rules say otherwise, these Ritae can only be used by a pack once per story. And the story is kind of a nebulous term in Vampire the Masquerade. Often, in my experience, a story is usually about 3 to 6 sessions. 6 being kind of the extreme for a story. And really, the only real beginning and closing point to a story is some narrative beat, or a character arc, or something like that, or like the opening or closing of a mystery can be the start or the end of a story, respectively. It doesn't have to be anything flashy or a big fight or an epilogue or anything like that. But in general, when I say story on a mechanical basis, I'm basically saying you can do this once every 3 to 6 sessions, basically. And it's really up to the storyteller when a story has concluded. And usually a campaign is composed of somewhere between, 3 to 6 stories. So like a short campaign, obviously, is going to be about 9 sessions. And a longer campaign, about 18 to 20 sessions, right? That sounds about right. My understanding is that the average role-playing group basically plays 6 sessions of a game. So the average role-playing group was really only playing one or 2 stories total. And that tracks. Like my longest games have lasted years and years and years. I had a Vampire the Requiem game that I think lasted like 4 years. I have a D&D game I currently run now, which has lasted, I think, maybe 6-7 years now. And I have a Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition game, which I think I've run 3 sessions for, and we're basically in scheduling hell. And who knows if we're going to run that again. Scheduling is, it's the worst. It's impossible to schedule. What can you do? So I'll go through some of the Numinous Ritae. So the thing that they all have in common is that you can do them once per story, and you take an aggravated willpower damage. The whole pack takes 1 aggravated willpower damage when they do it. Now, each one individually also has systems within it which limit its use on some level and what you need. And there can be some debate about, I guess, well, can you can you do 2 Numinous Ritae in one story? And the answer it would be yes, in general, depending upon the specific Ritae. That might be dangerous. And aggravated willpower, though not, impossible to get back, it's it's not the easiest thing to get back. It's actually a little easier to get back for Sabbat than other vampires because of, Dr. Rita's Ritae. There are a lot of them that give back aggravated willpower damage, that heal aggravated willpower damage. I would say, and you have to buy them, the Numinous Ritae. They're actually part of the Ritae Advantage. They're a kicker of the Ritae Advantage that you can buy. But yeah, usually someone has to buy the Numinous Ritae Advantage to get new ones. But that's really up to the storyteller. The only thing DOT really does, as explained in the V5 core book, is it gives you some insurance that something really can't be taken away on a whim. and that if something is taken away from you, uh, you're compensated in a sense. You get back the experience for the dot. Uh, so it's really a way to kind of invest and tell the storyteller, hey, this is something I am interested in, and I want the story to focus on this. Uh, if the storyteller wants Numinous Ritae to be a really big part of the story, then the storyteller should probably push the pack. Probably should give the pack some incentives to take something like the Ritualist pack type, which gives you a free Numinous Ritae, or just give the pack one of the Numinous Ritae through a mentor or something. Right off the bat, though, obviously, then that Numinous Ritae, the knowledge of that Numinous Ritae would not be guaranteed until they, bought the pack dots or whatever, but that's neither here nor there if the story is about Numinous Ritae. Usually, so we did it the other way around, where the Numinous Ritae is something the players buy and the players buy into, because we knew this was a system that not all tables would be that interested in exploring, but that some tables would read this stuff and it would really grab them. And so they would have a mechanism to basically say, hey, we want this in the story. That's why you can buy them with experience. Simple as that. It also means that certain pack priests might have different interests or styles depending upon what they've bought in the Ritae Advantage. Like some pack priests might buy the Numinous Ritae kind of kicker in the Ritae Advantage, while others might take like the Innovator, which is more about like Ignobilis Ritae and kind of like doing things on the fly. And maybe like kind of like like researching Ritae and stuff like that. They do have a little synergy, those two kickers, Innovator and Numinous Ritae. But stylistically, narratively, they're they kind of go in different directions. Though if you have them both, they kind of work actually. So I'll go through them just to give you a sense of what they're like. Dreams of Raziel. The Book of Nod makes mention of several archangels visiting Cain with their creator's curses and false promises on their lips. While no definitive text exists, most Nada scholars agree on a core set of chapters or books that detail all these visitations. Amid the Apocrypha and Passover fragments that are not commonly recognized by Nadists as canon is the visitation of Raziel, according to these apocryphal tales. And this is basically to say, like, well, why haven't I heard about Raziel in the Book of Nod? Like, the Book of Nod basically talks about a couple of angels that visit Cain or talk to Cain, like Uriel, Gabriel, so on and so forth. But Raziel's not in there. What are you talking about? So this is kind of just to give a little kind of forward concept that, okay, well, there's Apocrypha to the Book of Nod. There are fragments and pieces of the Book of Nod. There's like the Oaxaca diaries. As we do in the kind of vocab section or lexicon section in this book, we basically detailed like kind of words, and one of the entries in the lexicon is the word, which is kind of a catch-all phraseology for all the theological underpinnings of the Sabbat, whether that's the Revelations of the Dark Mother or the Book of Nod, the Ereses fragment, so on and so forth, the Oaxaca diaries, basically all the stuff that is kind of seen as the theological esoteric underpinnings of the Sabbat. There's the catch-all term for that is the word. And so this would be part of the word, this kind of apocryphal Nada stuff. Since the Sabbat is pretty fractured, what is considered apocryphal and what is considered, canon is, more up for debate than it used to be. I do notice that this section is probably the last 3-column section in the book. I'm not a huge fan of the 3 columns. I think it works here okay. I think it's harder to read in general. At one point I did through a pass through the book and I removed the 3-column sections that made sense. I think the main reason I didn't change this to 2-column as I did the Antitribute section is because it just lined up really nice as a 3 column section. Like here, like 3 Ritae on one page, each one their own column. I thought that was just too good to mess with. Also, this creepy spider, trigger warning for people who don't like spiders. Um, Trigger warning too late. But there is a spider at the end of this. So the dreams of the Raziel are basically about that, like, torpor. It basically comes up with the idea that torpor is actually one of the curses of Cain. Um, that, like, the kind of like this dreamless sleep or a sleep of nightmares. That that when your physical body, in a sense, was like put down, that your mind would kind of wander in this realm, almost like return to Nod, in a sense. As we know, Nod um, is a term for sleep, like to nod off and so on. Um, and obviously that comes from other mythos. It actually comes from, it's believed to come from Nodens, which, if I remember correctly, is a Celtic god, who is like a god of the dream realm and sleep. He actually makes it into the Cthulhu mythos through like August Derleth, I believe, which is kind of hilarious. Um, and so this land of nodding off, you know, all that, it has a kind of dreamlike quality, the land of Nod, for a reason. And so the idea that once your body is put down, your mind and soul kind of wanders in this almost dream realm of torpor until you can find your way back to your body, basically. It's kind of the conception here. And so Dreams of Raziel is basically about awakening Cainites from torpor. So I'll read the system and the example. A Cainite in torpor is placed within a specially prepared bath filled with blood, mineral salts, and rare herbs. The blood filling the tub must come from a vampire that is either lineage related, sire, child, etc., to the Cainite in torpor, or from a rare supernatural being such as a mage or a lupine. If the affiliated Cainite's blood potency is 3 or less, they awaken immediately. Cainites with a blood potency of 4 or higher instead have the link of their torpor retroactively shortened. For each pack present when the Ritae is invoked, the Cainite in torpor treats their humanity as if it was +2 higher for the purposes of determining the duration of their torpor. So with 1 pack, they get +2 humanity. With 2 pack, +4, and so on and so forth. So you can really dramatically shorten the duration of torpor, even for high potency blood vampires. If they've already spent that much time in torpor, they awaken soon after being submerged in the blood. Otherwise, they must wait out the rest of their new torpor duration within the ritual bloodbath, which is maintained with short daily devotions and bagged or fresh blood. Vampires awakened by this Ritae have a hunger of 4. So that's a pretty powerful Ritae for a sect such as Sabbat, which will notoriously have low humanity ratings. Like torpor is pretty dangerous situation for you if you have low humanity. There are only a few ways around that. I believe there's some Cathari stuff that mitigates that, if I remember correctly. I think there's some lore sheets that may mitigate that, but really not a lot. So if you're running around with a low humanity in the Sabbat, if you have low humanity, chances are you probably have a high blood potency too on top of that, because the easiest way to lose humanity is diablerie. This is a great Ritae to kind of get you back in the fight, and of course could also be used to like awaken a Methuselah potentially. Though that would probably require a lot of packs, because a Methuselah, of course, would have very low humanity and very high blood potency, and why would you want to wake them up as well, unless you kind of have a death wish, or they have some information you require that you don't think you will get through Dabri, or you don't want to risk basically drinking it out of them, and there goes your chance. Maybe you figure, well, once we get the information, we can put them down and then eat them. Well, that's as a storyteller, I would encourage that kind of thinking personally, but who knows? Um, so I'll give the example. Passy has entered torpor after getting into a scrap with a werewolf. Her pack is unable to wake her as she is the progeny of a powerful Malkavian anti-tribute elder. After a month of searching, they are able to get another pack to perform the Ritae with blood taken from a mage. Since her blood potency is 4, she doesn't waken immediately. Instead, this Ritae will increase her humanity by +4, +2 per pack, including her own, for the purpose of determining her new torpor duration. Passy's 2 humanity is effectively increased to 6, which reduces her torpor duration from 1 century to 1 month. So, it's pretty good. Since a month has already passed, Passy awakens with a hunger of 4, soon after being placed in the bloodbath. Yeah. So she does actually kind of awaken immediately. She just doesn't awaken immediately as per the terms of the system. I think so. That could be a little clearer, but I understand what the point was. If you have a blood potency of 3, you wake up right away. It doesn't matter what your humanity is. So a pretty useful Ritae, and I think you can see how it might have, a lot of different uses, even though I think it's probably one of the more straightforward one. It could be possibly made more powerful, if the not needing as many packs, that kind of thing. There are different ways you could play around with it, and so on and so forth. And the first few here, these first 2 I'd say are the most basic of the Numinous Ritae. The Labyrinth Rune, I'd say, is probably the most complicated of them all, and potentially the most interesting in play. The Enochian Spear is kind of the most basic, straightforward Ritae. This is a weapon to kill elders. It also, I'd say, the one that's most obviously flawed, and not like suited for purpose. This is the kind of Ritae that's going to need a lot of work to perfect. And to kind of, adapt the system to what the needs of the Sabbat. Because as it stands right now, it doesn't do what they need it to do. Though it's still a somewhat useful Ritae, I would say. So this Ritae enchants a simple melee weapon, usually a sword or spear, so that it does increased damage when it strikes a Khainite with a high blood potency. Thin Bloods and Mortals aren't impacted by this enchantment. Wraiths can be struck by these weapons and suffer supernatural wounds. The blood used in the Ritae can also impart the enchanted weapon with a special property determined by the storyteller. For example, a fire axe anointed with the blood of a gangrel Methuselah might disrupt the shape-shifting powers of any supernatural being it strikes, while a sword bathed in the blood of a Ventru Elder might inflict wounds that bleed liquid silver, or a bat encrusted with the teeth of a Giovanni might cause aggravated wounds when it strikes a restless spirit or zombie. So I think that is kind of an interesting flavor. You could come up with weird Enochian weapons based upon the kind of vampire blood it was used in their creation. I don't know what a powerful caitiff's blood might do, but weapons created through this Ritae usually retain their enchantment until the end of the story. But each additional pack present at the Ritae increases this duration by 1 session. Although a pack can never have more than one of these weapons at a time, unless this Ritae is performed with 3 or more packs present, any weapon created shatters after it first strikes a vampire with a blood potency of 5 or higher. So the number, yet again, and this is another Numinous Ritae that is really dependent upon getting a lot of packs together. That's pretty common for most of these Ritae, in that their power systems are very much determined by participation of other packs, which makes sense, because these are supposed to be the weapons for the sect to use against the antediluvians, these Ritae. So the fact that they kind of are very kind of clout heavy, to use the arena traits, that you basically have to gather other Sabbat to do this. You can't just be like kind of lone wolves doing the Numinous Ritae thing. And you kind of will have to negotiate intra-pack and inter-pack politics to get these kind of things together. Unless you get a lot of packs together, it's basically a very temporary weapon. Also, if this weapon is ever exposed to sunlight or used to kill a mortal, it immediately loses its enchantment. All right, so really something that only is brought out um, when you need to kill a powerful vampire. Um, and here I'll read, and then there's a little chart about the blood potency and the extra damage it gets and the type of damage it does. Um, so I'll read the example to clarify it. Sis carries a baseball bat studded with the fangs and teeth of a Malkavian elder, and enchanted with the Ritae of the Enochian spear. This is a heavy impact weapon with a base +2 damage value. When Sis hits a blood potency 5 vampire with this weapon, he has a total of +4 damage to his margin of success, and all the damage inflicted is aggravated. Okay, so this little chart is about the type of vampire you're hitting, not the type of blood used in the weapon. All right, so the type of blood used in the weapon is more about the special properties being given to the weapon, but technically the blood potency of the vampire isn't is only important for the victim of the strike. And hitting a blood potency 5 plus vampire, it does 2 extra damage and it's aggravated. That is not probably going to really bother a vampire of that power level too much. Also, if you didn't get enough packs together, you're only going to get one hit out of it. If I was to elaborate on this, I would probably illuminate that the blood needed for the Ritae probably would have a minimum blood potency. Oh, hey there. Good to see you, Gord. I would probably be very specific that the blood needed for the Ritae would probably need, a blood potency of 5 or higher as well, or maybe 4, because that is not technically within the Ritae. Really, it just says that it needs blood. The blood used in the Ritae can also, so it needs the blood of, it just needs special blood. It doesn't even specify necessarily that it requires kindred blood. Let me see. Okay, of an elder vampire. So that's really the only requirement. So it says the Numinous Ritae attempts to channel a weapon by using the stolen blood, flesh, and secrets of an elder vampire. So they have to be an elder, and that is really the only limitation. There has to be an elder vampire for the weapon, which is either you're coating a weapon in their blood or you're making a weapon out of their bones, as is there, like the fire-hardened bones of Methuselah, or a sword using leather stripped from an ancient kindred to cover its hilt. Right? So in some ways you might not even have to kill them. And so I'm curious how people would use this, but as it stands, like as a vampire killing weapon, it's mostly good against like mid-level, like someone with a 2 or 3 blood potency. If you're using it against someone who's a higher blood potency, then it's not that useful. Well, that's a good question. Yeah, no worries. I have a pretty tight time constraints to today, in any case. So, well, that's a good question, right? So, the question is, how does the Enochian spear interact with elders who don't track health, such as in Gehenna War? Well, obviously, this book came out before Gehenna War, but we were thinking of Methuselah's and those like really high-level elder vampires in a similar way, as kind of narrative threats, not as a threat that you would track with wound levels as well, which is somewhat why we wrote it this way. So it would interact with them the same as any weapon would interact with them. It would basically be useless. I mean, plus two aggravated damage on a baseball bat or an axe or a sword is not how you're going to kill the antediluvians or a Methuselah or like maybe the youngest, maybe the most temporal of elders. It would be a frightening weapon. And even as the Ritae says, like if you strike, if you have made the weapon with less than 3 packs and you strike a blood potency 5 plus vampire with it, the weapon breaks. So you're only getting 1 hit with it anyway, unless you've really gone out of your way to get a bunch of packs together to perform the Ritae. So this is, this Ritae is probably the one that really puts its warts forward more than any of the others. This is the Ritae that's going to need a lot of work to be useful. So I'm glad that in Gehenna War they kind of went that way. Though my understanding is they kind of only gave the Methuselahs kind of like a paragraph each and didn't really, blow them up. Didn't really make... I would have made whole stories about them, I guess, is probably what I would have done. Somewhat like I did an Incognito report, where each one basically gets kind of a little bit of a chapter and a little bit of a story, instead of basically each Methuselah getting, basically a name and a paragraph. I felt that was maybe not the best way to go about it, but to each their own. I think they tried to fit a lot of different things in Gehenna War, and a lot of it useful. Obviously, I appreciate that they use stuff from the Black Hand playing the Sabbat in Gehenna War. All the Sabbat stuff in there obviously comes from our book. Well, I think for a Sabbat pack who sees fit to perfect this Numinous Ritae, really, I assume what they would basically be doing. I mean, its perfection would be, a weapon that instantly kills that vampire, like a literal stake through the heart or silver bullet for that specific Methuselah. So that I think would be the goal, is that you would basically target a specific Methuselah, or potentially antediluvian. You would seek out maybe their like progeny to make the weapon out of. You would find secrets about them to kind of whisper over the weapon. You would find places they maybe like lived or cherished as immortal, and that's where you would enchant the weapon, and all kinds of things. And that would be a whole story arc, right? Hunting down their progeny for the base materials would be a story. Finding secrets about their past, like favorite items or books or whatever, would be a story. And then finding the place, a place that they were like still spiritually connected to, would be a story. And obviously some of these things would be guarded. They would have their own like politics and intrigues around them. If like you had to go like beneath a pyramid or in a country club in London or something like that. And then of course the final arc of the campaign would be hunting down the vampire themselves, and inserting this a weapon into them to eventually take them out. I think that would be basically the story arc of the Enochian Spear Numinous Ritae Perfection. Would basically be a weapon that no longer plays by the rules of the damage roll. Like it's transcended the rules of the damage roll. It is now a weapon specifically crafted to murder this one vampire. And I think that's kind of what is hinted at. But that is a good point. Perhaps I will. That could be an interesting adventure, actually, in and of itself. An adventure basically all around perfecting this Numinous Ritae. I would say Gehenna War, a good book, but it kind of... the premise of the book was that it was the action book. It was like this is the campaign that's all about trench coats and katanas. So I think that's the book where you basically put in like all the stats for the katanas, how much an explosion does, all that kind of stuff. Maybe they could have put in rules about like, getting bonuses for not looking back when something blows up, car bombs, all that kind of stuff, Molotov cocktails, and just like over the wall, over the top kind of action campaign. I think was the idea of Gehenna War, and not so much the actual title of the book, which is The Gehenna War. So I could see why some people maybe were let down, but the premise of the book, definitely it was part of this kind of thematic arc of books. You had Bloodstained Love, which is the romance book, Tattered Facade, the horror book, obviously Gehenna War, the action book, and now you get Live from the Succubus Club, which is the like traveling book with like kind of a little bit of the veneer of the rock star stuff, the kind of like Anne Rice Lestat series there. And lastly, I think we're getting Courts of the Dam, which is like the political book. And I don't know if that arc's going to continue now. I know there are new, there's new management in a sense over the like line at Renegade, and I guess at Paradox too with Jess. So I don't know if that trend of making these kind of like theme books will continue. I don't know if that means they're going to go to by night. I don't know if that means that the STV is going to continue even in its current form. I have no idea. They really haven't told us much, nor have I heard of anything coming out after Courts of the Damned. But it's pretty clear that Live from the Succubus Club and Courts of the Damned, look like they were the last books produced by the kind of previous heads of WAD at Renegade, which is Johanna Peterson. The next Ritae, I think, is probably one of my favorites personally, which is the Labyrinth Rune. So this is kind of like a very meta Ritae, a meta ritual, and a kind of meta game Ritae in and of itself. It basically lets you break the rules. The idea is kind of very Lilin inspired. That why are we playing this game by anybody's rules? Like, we should break out of this kind of like reality. Obviously, that also means it has kind of Cathari-esque elements as well. And I'll say this is definitely the one that I could see players abusing the most. So I would just say the Labyrinth, I'll just read the system and the example to give you because I think that really boils it down without me getting too deep into kind of the esoterica of it. So the Labyrinth Rune Ritae solves riddles, unlocks secrets, allows a pack to see things in unexpected and novel ways. So think of it as there's an Ignobilis Ritae, I think it was Ignobilis, which was kind of like I forget what it was called. It was kind of like dream walking or something like that, where you would basically have this kind of like spiritual journey. Pretty sure it was an Ignobilis Ritae in the 2E Sabbat book, and you would like do like sweat lodges or like have lots of pain or starve yourself. I've definitely role played that in LARPs, and it's been very interesting. I forget the name of the Ritae off the top of my head, but it's a classic kind of Sabbat Ritae where you basically deprive yourself of things or wound yourselves or like hang yourself from hooks, that kind of thing. And the pain or the deprivation or the hunger puts you in a kind of altered state, kind of transcendental mindset that allows you to see beyond your kind of frontal lobe or ego. It allows you to tap into your subconscious in a sense, or in a more vampire sense, to tap into your beast, and perhaps see things in a different way, understand things in a different way, and hopefully give you answers for how you should proceed. It's kind of a Ritae often done uh, in almost a like prophetic way to like see what you need to do if you are at an impasse psychologically or spiritually. Um, so you performed the Rite in your game recently, Gord. Uh, their La Sombra Necronomist was fixated on the idea of pulling lost knowledge in alternate worlds from the abyss. They got together in the catacombs with the bishop, locked themselves down there, and danced, ran, walked until they started walking through the halls of their shadowed mind. Right, yeah. So that's a pretty like a darkened catacombs. Definitely a good place for the labyrinth rune, right? Like a literal labyrinth to kind of mimic the labyrinth of the mind. I know that's a something that's actually done in real life. Those are drawings of the mind, or actually the physical brain, as a labyrinth on the ground that people walk to kind of just get into an almost dissociative state and like go blank or zen. So the labyrinth rune Rite solves riddles, unlocks secrets. When used this way, the player of the officiating priest asks a number of questions of the storyteller equal to the number of packs present at the Rite. These questions must be connected to an item or person present at the Rite. So right off the bat, it's kind of a legend lore for vampire in a sense, but that's not that's not necessarily the only way it can be used. This Rite can also be used to guide a Cainite through the labyrinth of their own mind and psyche. This can help them access untrapped potential or reinvent themselves. After being the focus of this Rite, a Cainite can remove one of their discipline powers or amalgams and replace it with a different power of the same level. They can also learn amalgam power as if it was the power of the secondary discipline required for the amalgam. If any of these changes cause them to have a duplicated power, they replace one of the duplicated powers with the power of the same discipline and level. This Rite could potentially be used to help a Cainite quickly change paths, or even heal deep psychological trauma. Those potentialities are left to the storyteller's discretion and the need of your story, but delving into the psyche of another vampire could also awaken unknown dangers. Okay. Well, that's an interesting use for it too. They used it in your game to determine the bishop's intentions and goals. All right, so that's pretty interesting. Like if you're maybe a paladin pack, especially, or like trying to see if a leader is worth following or doing business with, then yeah, I could see that a labyrinth rune being an interesting way to go about it. And the example is Buzzsaw has the Conceal Amalgam. Okay, so this is an example that's specifically about the secondary use of this discipline, which is a very meta use. And this kind of goes back to kind of systemic issues. Well, not systemic. System issues mechanically with you kind of being locked into like discipline levels and amalgams. And how certain amalgams have like weird prerequisites. It's a simpler problem you find in Feng Shui, though to a lesser extent, because Feng Shui you don't have like a million different options once you're locked in originally. But also in Exalted, where you have these like branching paths, or if you're familiar with Dungeons and Dragons, kind of like the cleave tree of feats, or the like point blank shot cleave. Or rapid shot tree of feats in Pathfinder as well, where you basically have these like trees of powers that you kind of have to plan out from like level 1 or experience 0, and maybe that's not really the way your character was intended to go, and this kind of gives a mechanical out for that, and it kind of solves other problems that are created with like amalgams and kind of branching tree discipline issues. So Buzzsaw is the Conceal Amalgam, a level 4 obfuscate power that requires a secondary discipline of Auspex 3. They enter the Rite of the Labyrinth Rune, guided by their priest, and replace their level 3 Auspex power with Conceal. Buzzsaw now has the Conceal power twice as a level 3 Auspex power and a level 4 Obfuscate power. To rectify this situation, they decide to replace the level 4 Obfuscate power Conceal with the level 4 Obfuscate power Vanish. So it's just a quick way to do it, and there's no experience break. You're not getting a level 4 power, as it were, for cheaper. All the power, the experience cost is the same, and the Rite has been performed, and it can only be performed, once per story, and the whole pack has to do it. So I think a good balance of narrative and system use there, and of course, it's more commonly used, as this kind of almost kind of like a more complex spirit touch, I guess. Um, all right, next is let's see how much time I have. All right, I think I have enough time to get through most of these. Next is a Saturnine sign. Uh, this this is kind of like a defensive ritual, which is, we didn't want it to be too powerful, simply because defensive stuff is not really the Sabbat's forte or what it's known for. But we wanted it to be interesting. Um, so one of the earliest Numinous Ritaes, proof of Cain's favor. Okay, and they build their father's house on the square and level. A new Enoch, free of the tyranny of the ancients, where mortal and vampire know their place before the throne of Cain. Yeah, so this is kind of a nod to kind of the almost Masonic uh, principles that you can find within Nodist thought, um, on the path of Cain, where Cain is basically like not only a farmer and a brother and like a iconoclast, but he's also like the builder of the first city and the ruler of the first city. So, like, in a sense, he's kind of the first, Mason, you know. So if you kind of extrapolate from that as Cain is the first Mason in a sense, then you can kind of bring in all this Masonic esoterica into the path of Cain, which is very cool and very interesting. And this Numinous Rite really takes that idea and runs with it. This idea that Cain is really, the reason we have cities, and that on some level, Cain is kind of mistily connected to cities because he's the one who kind of invented the whole concept of them. So it's like copyright or patent taken to a mystical degree. So that's kind of the concept behind this Numinous Rite. So this Rite creates an area that magically excludes Cainites, similar to a warding circle. The Saturnine sign wards one structure no bigger than a cathedral for the rest of the story. If 3 or more packs are involved in its creation, the Rite lasts a year and a day. Cainites who currently have a vinculum, blood bond, or who have recently participated in a Vaulry can come and go from the warded structure without any issue. Cainites without a vinculum blood bond must roll their willpower versus a difficulty equal to their blood potency rating to enter or leave the warded building. If a trespasser fails, they take 3 points of superficial health damage, 3 points of aggravated damage on a bestial failure, and cannot enter. The trespasser can spend a point of willpower to try again. So, not a ward that is going to completely defend a place from an ancient vampire, but of the Numinous Rite, I think this is definitely one that you would either get for narrative story purposes, if you really wanted to lean into, we have a place that we defend, or we have a structure, or as I said, the Masonic aspects of the Path of Nod, or maybe as like a second or third Numinous Rite, if your pack is kind of like focused on Numinous Rite, because it has a very specific and interesting purpose. Yeah, that's true. Actually, you cannot roll a bestial failure when rolling willpower. So that probably should be there. It should probably reworded as a just a resolve composure roll as opposed to a willpower roll. But yeah, assuming from my reading of it, it should be a resolve plus composure roll, not a willpower roll. I guess that's just a difference in phrasing, and therefore the hunger dice would be included in the roll. So yeah, because otherwise, yeah, you can't you can't roll. You don't include hunger dice in willpower rolls. That's correct. Um, so for yeah, because the bestial failure is obviously such a base part of the mechanic, I think when writing this system, uh, they used willpower as shorthand for resolve plus composure. Basically, is what they were thinking. Or maybe what was I thinking? I don't know if I wrote. I don't remember if I wrote this one myself. Lastly, not lastly. Next one is Sepulchre Key, which is kind of a funny, almost onomatopoeia, just a funny kind of turn of phrase to say Sepulchre Key. So like the key that opened the crypt. And this is basically a Ritae, and it says it's one of the rarest of the Numinous Ritae, that basically lets you diabolize a non-vampire. So you basically allows you to do a memoriam on a victim. So you basically grab somebody, uh, oh, actually, no, maybe that's not on the non-vampire. I think that's I'm thinking of something else. All right, so after committing Daubry, the Dauberists and their pack can use the Numinous Ritae to share. Oh, I'm sorry, that's a pack Ignobilis Ritae that allows you to kind of Dauberize a non-vampire. I forget which one that is. I think that might be the Cryptics that do that Dauberize non-vampires, basically, that like eat non-vampires and get their like memories. So this one is specifically about basically doing memoriams on a Daubry victim. So after committing Daubry, the Dauberists and their pack can use this Numinous Ritae to share a communal dream journey through the victim's memories. So this is similar to a memoriam, but the memories being explored belong to the Daubry victim. Everyone in the pack who participates in this Ritae enters a torpor-like state for the scene while they share this experience. They must have some understanding of which of their victim's memories they wish to explore. This may require obtaining a memento, kidnapping a touchstone, or interrogating the victim beforehand. The Dauberist usually takes on the role of the victim in these stolen memoriams, and their pack either accompanies them as a half-seen chorus of shadows, or by taking on the roles of memoriam NPCs. So I actually wrote a pretty detailed memoriam section for the Vampire Player's Guide. I think only a page or two actually made it into the book. Though I did notice some of the concepts and ideas were reproduced in the In Memoriam book, though none of my words were used, just a lot of the concepts and stuff. So I had a pretty detailed concept of this that I thought about kind of adding into the book, but I decided that the Memoriam rules in the V5 core book were good enough that if I just referenced them, that would be fine. And the V5 Player's Guide Memoriam rules, I think, are even better. I basically wrote a very simplified version of Memoriam. I haven't read the In Memoriam book. Mostly what I hear about that is it has rules for creating Ancilla vampires instead of neonates. But from what I've read, that is basically like a page of stuff. So I don't know how useful that book would be here, but hopefully there is some synergy there. Then there's Sigil and Scribe, which is basically about making basically kind of like hiding yourself from the Antediluvians, like cloaking yourself from the Antediluvians on like kind of almost like psychic metaphysical level, so that their pawns have a harder time like seeing and finding you, which is a very interesting idea. Like it's the idea of basically becoming their predator. Like they can't detect you, so they can't see you coming, and they can't like get you. At least one Toreador into tribute claims the sigil is their design. All right, so it's like literally the packs are like branded, like the packmates are like branded or tattooed with this sigil that makes them harder for the ancients to perceive. So for the rest of the story, the pack becomes occulted against supernatural powers attempting to remotely discern their identity, location, or potential future actions. All such powers have their difficulties increased by +2. This doesn't protect packmates against direct detection, such as having an obfuscate power pierced by an auspex power, but it does protect against powers and rituals such as Bloodwalk, Clairvoyance, Illuminate the Trail of the Prey, Premonition, Telepathy, and Truth of Blood. Powers that rely on others to gather information, such as Animalism, or manipulate the pack into betraying themselves, such as Presence, are unimpaired by this Ritae. So it kind of it's very direct in the idea of if we're hidden and if we're cloaked, kind of like predators, they can't find us. So, but it's really mostly about kind of protecting yourself against powers like premonition, which is one of the ones that thing like these powers of kind of prophecy or future seeing, which I think is very interesting in Lost in the Garden. We have a sidebar basically about premonition and fighting against antagonists who have the ability to see the future or potential futures and how that goes about. And the sidebar is basically about, well, what if the players have premonition, and the villain has premonition? Like how does that interact? Because the kind of plot of Lost in the Garden revolves around the players being manipulated to fulfill a prophecy, basically. And so, how is that affected if they themselves are trying to use premonition to guess what the enemies are about? And it's kind of fucked up mind game and an interesting sidebar and a really cool adventure. So in your game, you did a bastardized proto version of Sepulchre Key. In Miami, a minister at Dalbrides at Tremere sought out ritualists to reach into his memories. We use that as an opportunity for her to portray the Tremere and see the inner workings of the city's chantry and Camarilla. Very, very lucky, messy, critical. The Memoriam caused her to spy a terrible power that was drinking from the regent in plain view of the court, but unnoticed. First glimpse of Methuselah for that pack. Lost in the Garden is killer. Very good stuff. Yeah, I love Lost in the Garden. Like, Steffi is an incredible talent. I hope they put out more games. Yeah, well, that's very cool. That's a great use of Sepulchre Key and very interesting. I love mixing it up and play in my Requiem games because Memoriam and that kind of concept was really brought forward in Requiem. That became a major part of Requiem. This kind of like dreams and torpor and like living out past lives. It's actually a concept we developed in Mummy the Resurrection and Mummy the Curse, and in I think the very first book I wrote with Ken Hite for Vampire the Requiem. Boy, I can't remember the name of the book, but it was kind of a toolbox for all kinds of vampire origins. And I wrote a whole section about like blood gods and alternate kind of moralities and stuff like that. And I did actually write a huge section on basically. No, I don't think it was Danse Macabre. I don't remember the name of the book off the top of my head, but it was a Vampire the Requiem book. Well, I'm sure if I just put in my name and Ken's name, it'll pop right up. Mythologies was the name of the book. 2006, Vampire the Requiem. But I did write a whole section of that was basically Memoriam. It was basically a whole section on basically, well, what if a player goes into torpor or something like that, or the players go into torpor to seek out some kind of information from their past. If they're playing older vampires, like how would that work? And so I wrote a whole basically section about that. I wrote powers and items that could like put the group into a torpor state. It was basically like incense that would put the whole party into torpor willingly for a brief period of time, and they could have like a memoriam. They would basically do a flashback, and so it's a very. So I think flashbacks are great. I've used them in Vampire the Requiem and Vampire the Masquerade. They can be very interesting in a vampire situation. They can be very interesting to like kind of play as your sire, which I've done in Vampire the Requiem. That's kind of how I did the big reveal in my very long Vampire the Requiem game, where they basically discovered that the big bad guy they've been kind of fighting throughout the whole game was dead, and had been dead for a very long time, and that it was actually this other was this kind of trusted Primogen was actually the villain because they had murdered, they'd eaten that bad guy, and they had kind of like psychologically impressed upon themselves that they're now the new like big bad guy. And all that, and that was kind of the big reveal was done through a flashback as like one of the characters' sires. Um, and yeah, it was fun. It was pretty after kind of 4 years of play, it was kind of a shocking twist, and interesting, and it was Belial's Brood related, which I think at that point had only been out for a little bit. Okay, so here's the spider, and this will be the last thing, and I actually have to take off soon after this. So this is Starlit Blood for Ancient Stones. Um, so this is about places of power. So I mean, not just because of this one. So Spear of Enoch, Starlit Blood for Ancient Stones. These are really about kind of giving off hints or breadcrumbs for how the Antediluvians can be defeated. I don't have an answer for that, in or out of the game, obviously. That's really up to your table, how they want to do it. Is it like a riddle contest? Do you say, Absalom's true name backwards? Do you, like, make Toreador look in a mirror? It doesn't matter to me, right? Like, that's really up to you. Or what the fun thing is, like make a fact pact with the Fae. I don't know, lock them away in a literal lockbox. So Starlit Blood for Ancient Stones is yet again kind of goes back to the core of the Numinous Ritae. I think it's good that it's the last one. It is basically about finding sites of power and tapping into them. And what a place of power is kind of explored in this. So I'll just read the system and then talk about it. Right, yeah. Mechanically, I agree. It doesn't do a lot for you. It leaves a lot to the imagination. So the Sabbat gathers at a site of power, spills their blood at its heart. When performed with enough Cainites present, the mystical energy is disrupted and destroyed for at least the rest of the story. While the storyteller is the final arbiter, usually only the weakest places of power can be disrupted by a lone pact. Sites that attract other supernatural entities, such as lupines or mages, often require at least 3 or 4 packs to successfully perform the Rite. While these sites can eventually be rehabilitated, most are abandoned and never recover after they are spiked by this Rite. Places of power that were significant to an antediluvian or other ancient vampire also have a chance to reveal a weakness or secret related to that or their vampiric bloodline or even mortal life. The ancients often guard these places of power or keep tabs on them through their pawns, both mortal and supernatural. If they are somehow connected to their Gehenna schemes, the Black Hand has yet to understand how. So, basically, I mean, mechanically, as a storyteller, I would feel like I would have a free hand to basically do whatever I wanted. If you disrupted a cairn, like maybe dedicated to a specific spirit, then maybe spiking it would give your pack some favors from like some bane or antagonistic spirit, or maybe the spirit itself, it's kind of like remnants, its gore or whatever are kind of like now on your pack. So obviously that would be bad for people who could detect such a things. But it might give some mechanical benefits to you as well. So I think that would really be up to the storyteller. But obviously the main thing it gives you is if the place of power is connected to an antediluvian or ancient vampire, then you're going to learn something about that ancient vampire in places. And that's kind of the main thing. And they also, if the allies of these ancient vampires are using this site to kind of gain power, then it's a way to spike it. But yeah, I agree. Mechanically, perhaps it could be more upfront about the fact that it could give some benefit to the pack. That spiking it, maybe there could give a bonus to, who knows what. I guess if I was to rewrite it or do something to kind of juice it up a bit, I guess what I could do is make a little chart that basically talks about what kind of benefits you could get from different kinds of sites, And then if that site was connected to like an ancient vampire or something, little kickers, like what kind of secrets could you get, that kind of thing, and if those secrets would be of use. I actually, um, yeah, I think it's an interesting Rite, but it's definitely very narrative, and the mechanical benefits are really up to the storyteller if there are going to be any. And yeah, it is definitely, yeah, it's definitely a story element. It was also kind of a Rite where it's like something that allowed for some crossplay. If a Sabat pack was basically destroying werewolf Karens or destroying like mage power sites or whatever, or like stoppering up kind of holes in the Shadowlands that wraiths were using, that kind of thing. Um, definitely a way to piss off a whole lot of supernatural creatures all throughout the world of darkness. Um, I'd say, boy, I was gonna say something, but it totally blanked from my mind. Um, all right, well, I'm sure it'll come to me eventually. Um, I'd say there, yeah, it's definitely kind of something you could base a whole chronicle around, and that's kind of uh, what we were hoping for. And we left it pretty open as far as the mechanics beyond, like, whatever secrets you could discover. Oh, right. So that actually reminds me of my vampire game. Sorry, not vampire game, my D&D game that I'm running. That I've been running for quite a while, which started off as a Saltmarsh game and now has, way beyond that. I think they're like 12th or 13th level or something crazy like that. Um, yeah, I think they're 13th level now, starting from 1. And now there's kind of this like Vecna plot line that they are exploring or whatever. And they, in a very similar sense to a Vampire the Masquerade game, they're basically kind of discovering Vecna's origin story. And each time they discover a piece of Vecna's origin story or a secret, something that no one knows, but that is a secret basically, that's not public knowledge. Whenever they get a secret about Vecna, it gives them a benefit. They get a passive benefit from keeping that secret. Like I think they get like I think the whole party has resistance to necrotic damage right now and some other stuff. So I think they know 3 secrets about Vecna, and each one of those secrets gives them a different passive advantage. Like I think they have like resistant to necrotic damage. I think they have resistant to radiant damage, and I think they're all immune to the poisoned condition or something like that. I forget what it is. It's something like that. So it's giving them these passive bonuses. Oh no, they have magic resistance. That's right. So they're resistant to necrotic damage and they have magic resistance. So they all have advantage on saving throws against spells. So pretty powerful bonuses. Not so much the resistance to necrotic damage, but the magic resistance is pretty powerful bonuses as long as they keep the secret about Vecna. So they have to keep an active secret about Vecna's like origin and powers. Um, to get these benefits to their party. And if they expose the secret, they know on some metaphysical level that like weakens Vecna, and that it could make kind of like political and story change if these secrets are exposed. Um, but it means they'll lose the advantage that they may like. They might like they like having magic resistance. They like having necrotic resistance. So I think Starlit Blood for Ancient Stones, if I was to rework it, perhaps I would work something in along those lines about learning the secrets of these vampires. And basically, they would maybe get some kind of bonus or pack power as long as they like kept that secret. And that exposing the secret, would weaken that vampire ancient in some way. But they themselves would lose that benefit. They might gain other benefits like clout within the Sabbat, that kind of thing, and of course that ancient would no longer, have the benefit of keeping that secret for whatever reason they wanted to, and so on. It would be less of a dilemma in the Sabbat than it would be in the D&D game, I would think. But it could be interesting. It could be an interesting kind of mix of narrative and mechanical issues. Well, unfortunately, I'd have to take off. I have a appointment that I must make, and I have a little bit of driving to do to get there. Um, so I will see you all next time. I'm glad that we were able to get through um, all the Numinous Ritae. Yeah, thanks for coming and for the questions and the rest. And I'll upload this as soon as I can. I guess next time we're in the Blood Feast section, which I believe is disciplines. Yes, so we'll be talking about disciplines next time, which will probably take me a while to get through unless it's a super long stream. All right. Well, yes. Praise Kane, and I'll talk.